more or less. I can show you the audience really fast. You guys can also say hello. So go ahead. You can see we have a quorum. And these are the people that are in Lisbon, but actually came, not like the other ones who the chat said they are in Lisbon. They are not here. Bad on you. No, I'm kidding. Okay, I'm just gonna share my screen really fast so you guys can see the presentation. Infinite loop, of course. And here we go. This whole thing is gonna be a little bit different, of course. Let me just try and do this. It's gonna work like this. Before we start actually with the event, I'm just gonna give you a quick overview of what Friends of Figma Portugal is, because I know that many of you are finding about us through this event, and it's just a quick rundown on what we do and what these events are for. And I think I'm sharing them. I can see it on the iPad. Great. So what is Friends of Figma? We are a global community of designers who basically just have the share of love for Figma, easy enough to understand. You always can find workshops, live streams, talks online and on site. We do it here in Portugal, outside of Lisbon also. We are one of the few groups that is actually country-based, not just city-based. Most of the groups actually are based on a specific city. And why? Well, Portugal is not that big, and we know that the community of designers here is also not that connected. So it has helped us get everyone to find out about different communities everywhere. We do a bunch of those. Well, yeah, this is the team, Friends of Figma Portugal, or at least part of them, including some people who have collaborated with us, for example, last year on a small event that we have, which is Layers, a conference. We're based out of Lisbon, but we also have people in Porto, Aveira, and Coimbra, and Faro, and we've been doing events everywhere. So if you guys ever want to check out events on other cities, you can. If not, you can always check them out online, because almost everything that we do is also available on our YouTube. Here you can see a little bit of how those events ended up looking. If you were looking for the QR code, no worries. I'm going to put it again on the end, on the last slide, so you have a little bit more time. But here you can see some of the last events that we did. I think most of these photos are from 3 events. Some of you might also be on some of these photos, because I know that some people come to these events recurrently, including our conference and everything like that. And again, we are not just friends of Figma, we are friends of a lot of people. We love to create communities and connect with other companies, communities, spaces that are available, like Lax is receiving us here today. They are one of our biggest partners, and actually they were the first partner that we ever made when we wanted to start this in 2019. The problem was, in 2020, there were no physical events, so we really didn't manage to work with them until way after the pandemic started drilling down. But here you can find a bunch of other groups that we've worked with, including Ladies at UX. We have at least 4 of them here today, I think. Or I think you are the 4 of you. You guys told me that was the Ladies at UX table, so I'm going to assume that. And a bunch of other projects that have worked with us in different events and things like that. Also, we're a very special chapter, because we are the only ones who actually have a conference, right? Like there's no other. There's a lot of events around the world generated by these user groups, but we wanted to really give something special and different for everyone. So we worked with Figma to try and get a conference ready. Once a year, we basically do a hybrid conference on site and online. This year, if everything goes well, is already the day is booked, which is September 20. But there might be a change, but it's in the same week. We're working with the venue right now. And you can already pre-register for early access to the tickets. It's going to be limited, although it's going to be free. It's a full-day conference, I think it's going to be like 10 talks, including some really cool names that we're going to try and bring, so you guys have access to that type of experience. But we also have a call for speakers, so if you feel like you want to say something to the community, and if you want to have a space, we're going to have 2 tracks, one in person and one online, and you can talk into any of those. So if you really want to share your ideas, your projects, you can also apply. If you register now for the early access, you're going to get 24-hour warning that the tickets are available just for the people who register on that early access. So if you're registered there, you get that ticket before. If not, it is whatever comes first gets the ticket, and that's it. And then, last but not least, if you want to be our friend, you can join our chapter on friends.figma.com. And we also have a Slack channel where we try to keep the conversation going and get everyone, like, if you guys ever have any doubts, if you're looking for a job, we have a job channel where people keep posting positions, things like that. We just want to make sure that everyone feels like they can participate and be part of this universe that is Friends of Figma. Okay. With that said, and I hope that now everyone caught the little QR code, I'm going to jump for today's presentation. And I guess what most of you guys came here for. So today I'm going to be talking about Figma for branding. And I almost clicked the stop sharing. I just wanted to click the hide. And before understanding what we're going to be talking today, maybe I should introduce myself. Wait, there's a problem here. Woo! I love it when these things happen. Give me a second. And I'm going to just do a little bit of magic. And this should work. Let's hope so. My entire presentation just disconnected by itself, so I wasn't able to change slides. I'm going to present myself really fast. My name is Bruno Figueiredo. I'm a brand designer that works mostly in digital experiences and spaces. That's how I present myself everywhere. I'm a geek and a builder. I love to build things and to create things. And I also am one of those annoying guys who just watch all the Marvel, Star Wars movies and things like that. Star Trek, not so much, but I try to get into the lore and understand it. I don't want to create any issues. I love everyone. But yeah, I do a lot of things. So I currently work as a lead designer at OutSystems, which is a tech company here out of Portugal. I lead the communities here with Friends of Figma. I run a podcast called Design is for Everyone that has been on hiatus for at least a year right now. And I still have 3 episodes to post and I haven't done it. And I keep saying this to see if I can convince myself to edit them. I train designers at Flag. I'm one of their teachers, and I mentor people on ADP List. If you guys ever have any questions or anything, I'm there. If I have a time slot, happy to chat, even if it's just so, hey, I would love to meet you. Nice, happy to do it. But that's really not important right now. What's important is welcome to LAX, welcome to this event. I think that you're going to like it here today, but we really need to thank them. And let's talk brand. Here's what we're going to do and what we're going to be talking about today. First, we're going to talk about the concept of brand systems, which is one of the biggest advantages of using Figma for branding, is making sure that you can scale stuff and use this concept of brand systems that expands a little bit more than design systems, just by a smidge, but it's enough to make a difference and be more integrated with more than just the one designer or the one type of role. We're going to be doing a little bit of mood boarding with FigJam, and then creating brands with Figma, visual design with plugins, and managing and scaling brands with variables and libraries, okay? So, and yeah, and this just broke because clearly this slide is on the wrong place. So I'm just going to do a quick stop and fix because apparently I am not as well prepared as I thought I was. So give me a sec here. I'm just going to stop sharing my screen and you guys are going to not see what I'm going to be doing because I don't want you. But well, while I fix this, maybe the people in the room and also people online can talk a little bit about why you guys are here. Anyone wants to say? Just so, I know I talked with a few of you. I don't know if anyone just wants to tell, oh yeah, I kind of just got lost and wandered into this building and now I just, yeah. It's a possibility. I'm not going to say that.
Pretty much. I work like 5 minutes away from you.
Okay, that's good. I would say, like, I don't see that as an issue, right? Okay, let's see what happened. You want to know something? It's always good when someone tries to build a thing and gets everything ready, and then the day of the event, things break. And usually that's my motto, which is, if you don't have a technical issue, then it's not live. And Anna on the chat here asking if the session will be available after the meeting. Of course it will. We always try to do our best to record all of these sessions and put them available on YouTube. So you guys can account with that. Okay. Sharing my screen again. Woohoo! And it's still creating some sort of weird link here for some reason. What's going on? There's some magic happening, and I don't know why. It shouldn't happen, but I think outside of that, we should be okay. So there we go. It's fine. And I hope everyone else there can see too. So what the hell are brand systems? Let's talk about brands. And when I say talk about brands, it's literally 4 of the brands that I work with on a weekly basis. The little 4 icons that you see around the fonts and everything that you see here are some of the brands that I work. Friends of Figma on the top left, and then you have the ring for the OutSystems brands, which is my day-to-day job. Design is for Everyone, which is the podcast, and then my own personal brand that I started developing as soon as I started doing more content and everything. Because of course I don't have an updated portfolio because I do too many things, and that's really hard. Of course, I keep trying to say, yes, I can sell myself. But yeah, I'm very bad at personal branding, but I try. I really, really try. Okay, so let's say that you have to work with 4 brands like me or more. I'm just using 4 because that's how much I can actually implement this in Figma really fast and showcase. And you have to work with different logos. You have to work with different colors. You have to work with different fonts and different messages. And the fact is, when you're starting to build things in a tool like Figma, this becomes kind of part of your workflow. Instead of just worrying, or let's not use the word worrying, but instead of just thinking about the creative process, because it will always be there, you can also start thinking about a lot of the ways that these things start to work. And instead of just looking at the logos and the text that you have, you start thinking, okay, but that's where the logo goes, and that's why the font is there, and what type of fonts are. And like almost every brand has the same type of things. It has a font for titles, or a font for paragraphs, or a message, and a brand name, and a tagline, and a logo. And all of these things tend to be kind of frame workable. And it's easy to build them in a way where you can go from dark mode to light mode and still keep everything working. And it tends to be, and now the slide makes more sense, all about the similarities and what we need to be aware of when we're trying to build these things. Now, what I'm going to tell you is this. All of the elements that you just saw changing on the slides were designed one time for one brand. And then I used Figma's capabilities to just kind of adapt immediately and automatically for all of the 4 brands, from fonts to messages to colors to logos. You can do that. And that's how we treat brand systems, specifically at OutSystems, where I do most of this job, but a lot of every project that I work on. And for example, if you guys know design systems or are at least aware of them, they tend to be this kind of like a collection of principles, behaviors, guidelines, styles, whatever. And usually they're only shared between designers and developers. And a brand system is more of a flexible collection, because brands are a little bit more flexible than design systems for products usually, where you also introduce things like ideologies, moods, tone of voice, messages, specific visuals that are attached to that brand, but everything else kind of extends on the same end as a design system. So you kind of have a little bit of more information to the system, and then that's shared between copywriters, designers, content creators, developers, project managers, your creative director who's a pain in your ass, whatever you want. But the fact is, brand systems are kind of how we and a bunch of other companies that we've also worked with and learn about extend a little bit of this concept of design system and focus on how can we create a brand, a scalable brand, where if you want to build something, you don't really have to think about the baseline structure so much, and then you focus on creativity. So if you build these things, it takes a while to get there, but once you have that, it means that you can very easily scrap up something. Hey, how are you? And then kind of just scale it really fast and go ahead. So why collection versus flexible collection? It's not that design systems aren't flexible, they need to be. It just, they are mostly flexible due to more things that are very specific, like the platforms and the language that you need to be coding them for. They are usually very much focused on how products are built for different platforms and things like that, and not as much as everything else. And they are very much focused on the concept of users, right? Like design systems and everything that has to do with more of experience and digital design has to do with this concept of users. While brands live in a constant state of change, and they also need to adapt to a bunch of other things like trends, campaigns, audiences, the state of the world, markets, whatever you want. That dev guy you think is funny and wants to build slides with a bunch of memes, but he really doesn't know what he's doing. Or that one rogue sales guy who tries to build a deck to sell your product and just does a very messy thing. The fact is, like, if you have a good brand system, these things become easier to I'm not going to say control, but at least help other people do better with the brand that you're working with. And the concept of using Figma for this tends to be more focused on the concept of audiences being much more different than actually users, because a brand that can communicate very differently on social and on their website. It's not about the end user, it's about the fact that like each one of them are channels with different audiences, and some of them are just going to glance at your brand. They're not going to use your product. So it's a little bit different and has to adapt with a bunch of stuff. So let's see an example, and this is already broken. So let's see if this didn't break too much, because that was supposed to be the ring of OutSystems. Apparently it isn't. So see, I broke things. These little 4 squares are some of our key design and brand systems elements that we use at OutSystems when we're talking about developing our stuff, right? We have stuff like the logo that everyone still thinks it's a brand. No, logos are not brands. Brands are much more than that. We have our fonts, our colors, our shapes, and like these are like basic tokens that we use to build things. Using these 4, we can set up a template in like 15 seconds and it's ready to go. And I'm not kidding. Like that's how fast we can easily just build something that, if you want to put a message on it, works. But then we have sub-brands, and we have projects, and we have things. And for example, in this case, we have our annual conference, and our annual conference also uses the same fonts, shares a lot of the same colors, but has very specific key visuals. And then these need to still feel like they are the same, right? So when you look at the one on top and the one on the middle, they kind of still need to be connected. And we try to do our best to keep some of the things that we built for this to scale really easily for this. And then on the bottom, you have our product design system. And our product design system doesn't really work like our brand. Like our product is very dense. It's very technical. So we can't really use the same premises that our brand needs to use when it comes to communicate. Our brand is more light, is a little bit more about white space. The product is a little bit like building a Figma or a Photoshop or an Illustrator tool. It's very dense. It has little icons. It has a bunch of stuff happening. So they need to adjust that, but still try to understand how they can work with our brand. And they have their own ways of communication, but they still share stuff like our fonts, some of our core colors, some of our core messages, and they use some of those things a little bit to try and keep the mood similar. This one was actually fun because they started developing their own design system and their whole thing without speaking with us, and then we got in and we worked side by side with them, and they very easily just adapted a couple of things, picked up a font here, a color there. Some of our pillars, we started sharing them. And I love working with those guys. We've been trying to do this collaboration a bunch of times, but the fact is, like, they have a team of 70 designers and they have a team of 3. So it's a little bit different. But they have a lot of stuff to do and they need to work, and we don't want to be blockers. So we just make our best to understand what they need, give them the tools, make sure that they are creating something that doesn't feel off when we work with them. They are the creators of the stuff that we promote. So we just work together. And again, all of these things are built into different libraries, into different systems, but since they share a lot of information among them, it's really easy to scale and adjust. And the fact is, like, if you look at the way that we build things, for example, what you saw there, for me, kind of turns into this. We have our own brand system that has a bunch of things like tone of voice, message, our logos, colors, typography, everything, but we also use the layouts that product generates. So they are one of our graphics, for example. And we pick that up directly from them. We don't generate any of them. We just use whatever they built and we put it here. Okay? But then if we're going to do the conference, for example, it's much more a different type of communication. When you're trying to communicate an event, it's much more about the live experience. It's much more about how you need to create this mood of like, what's going to happen there, not how is that related to your product. So we needed to be a little bit more stylized and a little bit more focused on trying to get that idea of the event experience. So we do our best to keep messages, layouts, principles, some of our logos and typography, but we do a lot of visuals, a lot of communication that adjusts the brand to then create this connection. Still, if you put one ad for the conference and one ad for the company itself or the product side by side, you can see how they are related, for example. And that's kind of what we want to do. Then you have, as I said, the way that our team designs our product. They still try to use stuff like our tone of voice, the same logos, some of the typography and principles. A lot of the stuff like icons and grids we share a lot, but they really can't do much more than that. They have things that are very specific to them. We're never going to touch that field. So they have their typography for the UI. They have a bunch of colors that they have specifically because of accessibility, of detail, of things that we can control. So we do our best to just support them, and they have their own product, and we share a bunch of stuff as we can, but we don't get on each other's toes on, oh, yours is too different than mine. That's not going to work. We communicate, they build a product to build products. It's completely different channels, completely different audiences, and we know that it needs to adapt. So that's a little bit of how we work. Okay, but let's not go too deep too fast. Let's start and try to do this a little bit more lightly, because all good brands start with an idea, and the idea here is also for you guys to see how to use Figma almost from hand to hand and use the tools and embed them into your process and how can you do stuff with it. So first things first, we're going to be talking a little bit about mood boarding with FigJam. And I'm just going to take a second to swap screens because I want to show you how to, for example, use it on iPad, because a lot of us prefer that type of tools where you just pick it up, you're sitting somewhere more relaxed, trying to take ideas and things like that. So I'm just going to stop sharing really fast, and let's see if this works for the ones in the room. I know that it's going to work better for everyone online. And yes, if you guys ever wondered why there were more than one Bruno online, that's because I have the iPad here ready to go. Let's see if it works. It should work, but it's not working. Okay. If this doesn't work, I'll just do everything on laptop, but the tools are essentially the same, and I'm sorry for that. Let me just do a quick refresh. As I said, if it doesn't go wrong, it's because I'm not doing an event, because there's always an issue. Yes, you're not seeing the iPad yet. You're seeing the camera that I have here. No. Give me a second here. I just need to give myself permissions, literally. This is really weird. So here we go. And by the way, guys, for the ones that are watching online, if you have questions or things that you want to drop, I'm going to open the Q&A. And if you guys want to have those questions answered at the end, we're going to have them there stored so that you guys can hear about it. Let's see if this works now. Share screen. Nope, it's not working. Hooray! First time, there's always a first time for everything. And apparently, when they change the layouts of this thing, it just stopped working. Okay. Best I can do for everyone is going to be this. I'm just going to log out and share a little bit of how the whole thing kind of looks. And then I'm just going to go full into screen mode. But here we go. And let's see if I can do this. Let's see. You guys can see it just, so share in the app. That's the best I can do. You can see the stuff that I have here. The tools are the same. It's not that different. It's just that when you're using a tool like this, it's easier sometimes to take a couple of sketches. FigJam specifically is a tool that should feel a little bit more accessible for everyone. It kind of just acts like a big whiteboard. And here's what I'm going to do to try and see what you guys can see. Let's see. I'm going to follow the other Bruno. Here we go. And you can see like some of the advantages of using this are more about the fact that like if I want to sketch, I can easily like build whatever I want and just design. If I want to build a logo or fonts, I can scratch ideas really fast, but it's still very low fidelity in the sense that Figma doesn't allow you to do much with this. It's very limited, but it's kind of on purpose limited, right? Like the idea here is like, don't focus too much on detail. And that's really cool because it just allows us to do a lot of stuff. And usually I use a lot of this to try and sketch ideas and everything like that. But since we're going to talk about branding as a whole and not just design in the visual sense of it, if we're talking about how we would be building a brand or working with someone, I'm going to show you how Figma, for example, has a bunch of AI tools embedded into FigJam to support that whole point of showing you how to design. Let me see if I can make the UI a little bit bigger so you guys can see a little bit better. But for example, here I have a bunch of sticky notes with ideas and bullet points that I was having. Okay, so I wanted to create, I think this was the first one. I wanted to create a juice brand I didn't really knew what ideas I wanted, so I kind of just started taking notes about things. There's a bunch of important keywords. The keyword organic, I had it on a sticky note, so I kind of just dropped it there and then put words that were used by, in this case, a fictional customer on what their audience would be. Okay, what could I do with it? I turned on these little things, and these things are called Jambots. And basically, it's a way that Figma gives you a more visual tool to work with something like OpenAI, where if you have like 1,000 stickies, you can just connect them to the Jambot and then ask him to do stuff. Figma by default has stuff like ideate, quick questions, teach me about this, or whatever. These are pre-built prompts, basically, that will save you a lot of time, but at the same time, you can use customs, and you can literally just write a prompt like you would on a ChatGPT. It's just that instead of just having to write everything on a prompt, now you can also embed information through the sticky notes and the text that you got from everything else that you were doing, for example, during a mood boarding session or anything like that. If they are connected using these little arrows to a box like this, easy enough, you can just share things really fast with it, and it starts taking notes. So, for example, I did this. I asked him to ideate based on what I wrote here, and he started giving me names for juice brands. Of course, a lot of them are really bad because, as we know, ChatGPT is not the best creative when it comes to naming. But I tried to grab a few of them, and I really liked Steel Stream Juice Company for some reason, so I just kept it. But if we wanted to do something here, we could easily just do the following. Do you guys have any keywords that you would want me to have here really fast to see how it works and how it changes the results? Keywords about juice brands that you would love to see, even if they are very wrong, or just a random word that comes to mind.
Fresh, juicy.
I don't know what that's going to bring, but okay. Anything else?
Energetic.
They can also not be about juice, okay? I was trying to give you guys the opening, but yeah. There we go. Natural. You're gonna.
A competitor for Poppy, the soda can that was like blown up recently. Like, can it search the internet? Like, is it like a Bing search kind of thing?
It doesn't act as a Bing search, I think, but we can try and see where it goes. So what we were saying is, I'm gonna put it on a different.
Like competitor brand to Poppy. It's like spelled Poppi.
Poppy.
Instead of.
Oh, sorry. There you go. No worries. Okay. If you just connect them here and just do the little connection point, and I'm gonna take these ones out because since these are inside the little thing called ideate, it's gonna try to replace them with new results. I'm just gonna click on ideate again, and it gave me different names. Okay, they are hidden here because it created them a little bit bigger, so I'm just gonna take this out of the way. But it started giving me different names: Fresh Squeeze, Juice Gen, Urban Juice, Nature Vibe, and Ecofusion. Based on the new keywords that you did, it just did that. If we want to change this, instead of being ideate, giving the different prompt that works better, we can do stuff like teach me about this, and it's gonna try and figure out what this means, what type of information it matters, and generates like a full text about how to appeal to young audiences under 27, and it adds a bunch of information. When developing your juice brand, employ names like Fresh Gen. So it becomes more conversational and turns this a little bit better. If you want to summarize, you just click a button, put it as bullet points, and it just will look at that information, and it will try to make it a little bit more bullet pointy if it had a lot of information to read and you don't want to read it. The same thing goes to rewrite this as an email to my boss. And it picks up all of that information that you were creating so far, and it will try to turn this into an email proposal for a new brand targeting urban millennials. I hope this email finds well, yada, yada. And it creates the whole thing. These are just some of the use cases that they have pre-built into the labels, but you can basically use this for any type of information management and trying to create new ideas. The Jambot is really easy for this, but if you want to start, instead of being from a blank or having to create a mood board out of nowhere, but you are looking for some of like way of thinking or framework, it also has this little tool up here on the top left that it's called the FigJam AI that allows you to actually ask him to create some sort of framework or structure for you to start. So let's say that you are not a brand designer and you're working on a brand for the first time. You can come here and say, generate a brand design process. And it will gather the information from all the templates that Figma has, plus a bunch of other information that it has online, and it'll try to figure out what would be a good process for brand design. And it will create a flow chart that will tell you start the brand design process. Is there an existing brand already? If not, and it gives you steps and things, so you don't have to like do all of that thinking from the ground up. Of course, it's more focused on product experiences and things like that, but it still answers for this, right? And helps you think a lot. And even for stuff like if your brand has to do with things like some sort of experience on a store or something like that, it can help you try and imagine some ways of like, oh, how would a customer on a juice store select something? Like it can try to use AI to give you at least some idea of what that could be in more of a graphical way and more of a format, like a flow chart or a bunch of sticky notes on a process, rather than having to read walls of text and not be very much organized in terms of information. So it's more visual, a little bit easier. And then when we're looking at just doing regular mood boarding, let's say I wanted to get a bunch of colors and I really don't want to have to go everywhere. The fact is that Figma has a bunch of plugins and things like that. So for example, all of these, you can just use something like Unsplash really fast, and you can, let's see if it works. Here we go. Just start looking for keywords that you're looking for and grab and research what you want. In this case, we're looking at juice brands. I can just look here for juice. And it gets a bunch of photos that you can look at for inspiration. I was mostly focused on less on a brand of juice, but more on a little color palettes from nature and things like that, because that was a little bit more of it. So I look at nature as a keyword and started looking at images that made sense to me in terms of color palettes that felt like what nature has to offer us, right? Like from these photos, it felt a little bit like it. And it's as easy as looking at this, clicking a button, the button generates an image on screen, and you have now a new image for you to put here, pick the colors, whatever. Again, easy enough for that part of the mood boarding. Sometimes people use this more for filling up the interfaces. It's easy enough for this. And then I'm just going to zoom in on some things that I have. For example, when I was looking at packaging, the fact that I wanted to test out things and see, I had a bunch of these examples that I found online, illustrations types. I designed myself a little bottle here with a little running orange instead of a running sun, because why not? Because I'm not stealing, okay? I'm not stealing their brand. I'm just playing around with it. And even if for some reason, whatever you find here is really cool and you want to bring it up into the branding that you want, you can do. And the same goes to trying to play around with stuff like generating images and things like that. I actually don't know if this one works. I'm just going to do a quick test. I know that there was a plugin called Magician that works on Figma, but I don't know if it works on FigJam, but we can check it out afterwards. Yeah, I think it's only Figma based, but also uses AI to do stuff like this, where you can ask him to generate images and everything. It used to be more of a paid feature. Now the company was bought by Figma. It was a company called Diagram. So you can actually use it inside Figma to ask for also copy ideas and things like that. We're going to see it afterwards when we start looking at plugins. But yeah, like it's easy to build a mood board. It's easy to start thinking about brands. And good thing about this is if you need to do this with other people, you can just share this as a link to anyone, and they can go, again, on their phones, their iPads, their laptops, and join the conversation. Plus, if you need, and you don't want to pay a gazillion of licenses to have those users, and you need to do a work session with customers or something like that, there's a little option called Open Session. You can just click on it, start, and for 24 hours, your file is open for anyone you want to edit and join the conversation, right? So for that period of creating a brand that many times starts in a meeting or starts on like, oh, we have a little bit of like a week or so where we're going to be doing more conversations, easy enough. You can use FigJam as that tool where you pick up ideas and start going at it. Okay, and that's a little bit of how you can use FigJam for mood boarding really fast. We also don't have that much time, so And now let's talk about starting to create brands with Figma and what type of tools you can use to look at how you build things and how you structure stuff. So let's bring all of that work in and put it into Figma and start making things. So first things first, because my mouth is dry. Let me just close this file. I have this document here, and I have this page here where I have already a bunch of stuff that I started playing around with to try and create a brand, but I don't really want to start from zero. So you can bring things from FigJam into Figma really fast, but I don't want it to be like jumping from tab to tab or anything. And Figma very recently launched the split screen option. So you can just drop your FigJam here on the side, make it a little bit smaller, and you have your mood board here, and you have your workplace here. Fast, easy to go, really simple. Plus, if you do have FigJam on iPad, you can copy and paste directly on your laptop if you're at least on a Mac. It just works directly between the two tools, Figma and FigJam. Nice, really easy. It just works and it's really fast. So let's start, for example, instead of the logo, because that's cool and everything, but I don't want to go there. Let's start with the colors and typography. So for the colors, I was trying to figure out what color should I use, and I have a bunch of images. And I don't really want to go and have to go right from the start and waste too much time thinking about colors and defining colors. So I'm just going to grab a couple of the images that I really like this one, the green leaf, and then the bird here. I'm going to copy them and paste them into Figma. Okay, really cool. And I want to grab colors from this, and like on a regular process, on a simpler option or anything like that, I would just go with my color picker and start generating colors. But apparently this one is locked, so I'm just going to unlock it. I don't want to waste that much time on that, so I can just open it up. I'm going to use a plugin for this called Image Palette, and it's just going to go through the image and find me, I think it's 5 colors based on overall color existing in the image, if the internet works, apparently, because today is slow. Let's see. Why does this always happen to me?
Does it create web accessible palettes?
I don't think they're by default web accessible, but I was going to talk about a couple of plugins where you can check that afterwards. I'm just trying to figure out why it's not running, because it was running 15 minutes ago, but well, an hour ago or something like that. But yeah. But what it does, it basically does a little bit of analyzes the image, kind of goes like in between all of them and tries to gather what information the image has and decides on like top 5 colors based on the image. Let me try on another image. I don't know if it's because that one is a little bit more complex. I don't know what's going on, or if the system is down, because it can be. Like, these plugins are run by people and sometimes servers are down. But apparently that's the case right now. Okay. I was going to say, it's fast. Click on a button, it takes like 5 seconds, because that's what it takes. But apparently not today. Sorry about that. But you can do this really fast. You can bring things like the images really fast, because they were generated by Unsplash. They still keep information like where you have it on Unsplash. So if you click on the information that shows up here, it's going to open a link to where you can actually credit the person or check out more photos from that person. Great way to kind of just keep all of that in mind. I'm just going to keep on using this to try and gather colors. I really like having some sort of orange color. I have this here. I can just pick it up, do a little bit of a color picking really fast, not waste too much time. And like, I have like a couple of 3 colors here, maybe more of a sandy pink tone from here. These kind of work together. This one is a little bit more saturated, but we can work on that. So I already started creating my colors. I have a bunch of fonts that I was testing out here, and like, fonts are some of the things that you can test really fast. If you want to change stuff like, oh, I just want to change the weight of them really fast, you can try and come here to the drop down. Let's see if this works. It's not working. Again, today nothing is working. But you can use stuff like writing everything is bold or whatever, and really easily just create as in any other tool. It renders fonts quite fast, but I had already gotten a bunch of them, so all I want to do right now is create a color palette. I was trying to make this fast, but it's not. So I like this font here. I really just want to create fonts and color palettes really fast, and you can just go do this, change sizes. prepare everything, and then if you want to just keep working on them and not having to waste too much time, you can use styles. Styles, basically, you go here, select style, create style by creating little plus button. This one is going to be like my brand font. Done, ready to use. This one is going to be for content, but I feel like this might need a simple font, so I'm going to use Inter because it works best. And I'm going to make this my copy font, let's call it. Done. Cool thing about Figma with this type of stuff, and including also these, where we can turn them into colors really fast, so colors that we reuse. I'm just going to call them like brand 1, brand 2, brand 3. Okay. Never say that demos are boring. This part of the work always takes a little bit of a tool. Let me just create those styles. Not what I wanted. Again, brand 3 and brand 4. So right now, we already have our fonts. We want to test them out with the brand colors. We can easily just come here and look for our brand colors. They are here, brand 1, 2, 3, 4. We can play around and do a lot of experimentation, but also build this type of stuff really fast. See how it works. I already have a lot of work done here for the other brands, so you guys can also see that. But you can also use this to just really easily play around with the concepts that you're trying to build. And maybe now it's a good time to start looking at the logo and all the fonts and things like that. But just as a heads up, again, all of your fonts are here. If for some reason you wrote something or you brought the content, for example, from the stuff that you have here, like the email for your boss, and you want to make that branded, you can easily just copy your text, drop it here, apply your copy font, for example, which is gigantic apparently, of course, because this wasn't done properly, and then just have a little bit of a color of your brand. So I'm going to do like this. And for some reason you want to use this for an ad or something. Let's say that we want to put the top on the title font color, title font size in. It's fast, again, same way as you're building for others. This is the most basic thing, that's why I'm starting with it. But in any case, it's much more like other tools. It doesn't limit you to build things. Plus, when it comes to fonts, especially when you're still defining how you want your fonts to run, there's some cool things that Figma does. Figma works with a lot of information from OpenType. So when you're developing your font selection and things like that, and you click on a font, there's little 3 dots here, open a bunch of options for your fonts, including details and variables. And if these are good fonts, which there's a lot of them out there, people build a lot of things in here that you can do. Like, usually there's stuff like, oh, you can turn ligatures on and off really fast using this control here. Or if they have some different styles, like the hashtag there, the ampersand there, you can see it works. Or kerning pairs, if you want to play around with the spacing or turning on or off. Plus, if you have a variable font, you can choose anything that it's not a specific style. This one, you can see that has a bunch of things, including like logic of wonkiness to the font. I don't know how that one is going to be seen, but I know that it has to do with some specific characters where you can see that they are looking a little bit different. And then there's also logic like optical size where you can play around. So this is a really good font, has a lot of options. You can play with them really fast. You don't have to go through different types of menus, whatever. But whatever you define here, you can save as a style. So it really just applies everywhere. And with the advantage that since it is Figma, it also generates code that generates those options for the font when they are implemented on a website. So you don't really need to go and figure out how to do that for code. It just generates that for you, and you don't really need to waste that much time. Okay. Let's look at the logo. I'm just going to grab our font here. I started playing around with it. I have brought this as the idea of the structure. I used FigJam's native fonts to just play around a little bit. It only has 4 different fonts, so it doesn't really give you that much options, but allows you to play around with the mood of it. So I like having the Still Stream Juice company like set up like that, so I can easily come here. I'm going to separate the 2 of them. I'm going to make this version of a logo or anything like that. I'm going to maybe alter this to be like a thinner font, smaller, just playing around with the whole thing. And I'm not going to be a perfectionist right now, although that's how I roll. I'm just going to turn it into vectors and Figma. When you do this thing, which is, let me just go, outline stroke, it saves all your characters as individual characters immediately, but still groups them so you don't lose that advantage of having to move. So if you're building a brand, it's easy enough so that you can then start doing things like, oh, I would prefer like this T to be a little bit higher. Or maybe let's play around with having the two S's a little bit different. So what, I can play around and making.
What was the shortcut that you used to make it
Outlined? So it's outline stroke. Usually it was, in the past, it was Command Shift O. Right now, I think they changed it to Command Option O for some reason. Command Shift O right now is how to turn on and off the outline mode for preview. I think that's an option.
The text into the vector.
That's it. It's outline. It's the outline stroke. When it uses outline stroke, it basically just turns everything into elements like that. Yeah. So there's also the option of using stuff like flatten, but flatten basically makes everything a gigantic vector with every piece not individually separated. Outline stroke does the separation, gives you access to control on the characters. You can play around with what you're designing. You can pile up things and just build it like that. Again, advantage of Figma, now that you have your logo design and you want to have it everywhere, you just use components. You turn it into a component. You call it logo, and whatever you need to design, now you have your logo ready to go and easy enough to pick up. I want to apply a really brand color to it, so I can just come here on selection colors. It's going to tell me that the color white is being used, and go to my styles and choose that I want my blue for the brand here, and done. What happens now is that I can just pick it up on any part of my document, and it's always here ready to use. Copy and paste it. If for some reason we need to change it here on the original and say, oh, actually, I wanted the juice code to be white on the application, we can just change on the original. It's going to be applied on everything else that we do, right? So components work really well for buttons, but they also work really well for logos and brand testing. And now that's actually what we're going to do. So I created a bunch of compositions, which a few fonts and things that I was playing around with, just to see how this brand would feel like. And I created another component here that has an icon that I can adjust and play around with, and you can see that it changes immediately on every single column. So for me, this is a type of playgrounds that I build a lot of times. I look for mood boards and things that I got, and I play around with like ad layouts or website layouts, but then I check out how the logos or the colors or the fonts work on it really fast. So in this case, we don't want that. We want the still stream logo. We just drop it in here, and it immediately goes and gets applied everywhere. Maybe we just kind of need to play around a little bit with the size, and since everything else is black, we can just change the color back to black, which is a really nice album by Amy Winehouse. But you can see like the whole thing testing out really fast, see how the logo works. If you want to play around and change this to the brand font, you can easily just come here and check out the brand font. The problem with this one is that the size is going to break. It's going to become really small. But since ain't nobody got time for that, we can also do this quick thing where you don't remember the brand font name, you keep one here, you break the style, there's the brand font name ready to copy or to get, and then you can just select everything else, and it's called Francis. And it's going to just apply. It's broken because we had a little bit of a weird spacing there. So we're already playing around with using it correctly, same here. But if you don't really know where it is, if you have only that brand font in the file, you can also do this, and it's going to tell you all the fonts that are being used on that file. So it reduces a lot of the options. And Francis is here too, so you can just do this. And for example, if you want to play around and apply colors, I can just select the whole thing, figure out the colors that I have here, and replace them with the colors that I have for my brand. So in this case, let's say that I want to play with having everything like kind of green, and the stuff that I had on gray, I can also try and play and make it orange for some reason. See how the brand feels, including like the little white background there. again, same thing. And it's really fast to just play around with colors, create color palettes. My practice, I tend to just pick these things up, break them a lot, and just duplicate, and then keep looking at them back and forth. I spend hours just testing out fonts and colors, but this is the type of stuff that I would build. And then for stuff like icons and graphics, there's some things that work really well and are somewhat fast to build. So let's say that we really wanted to have an icon that was a little bit more that classical kind of sun character type of thing. We can just use Figma's native tools. Like if you need to build one of those like rounded sunny things really fast, you have a star, you can add a bunch of points, put the ratio here, make it a little bit round, and then there we go. There's our shape. We can then play around with the shape and the brand colors really fast. So we have the orange here, so we can use the orange. If I want to make it a little bit more cartoony, I can probably add elements really fast. So I'm just going to have a couple of eyes. Vector editing in Figma is fun because its baseline is the same, but then there's a couple of superpowers that Figma has because of the way that it handles vectors. And I'm going to talk about that in a second when I'm going to be looking at, there we go. I want the little rounded lines here. Imagine if you had this. Also works, I think. But no, I'm going to go like this. And we have this little guy, simple enough to make him happy. Going to do really just a quick brand idea here. Let's say that I want to keep the same line width for everything, and I can just do something like this, like copy and paste the style really fast, and then apply the color inside. Like, great, I have a little character here to use. And since I flattened it, again, I can just turn it into a little component, call it the mascot, and the mascot is now ready to just grab here from the folder. It's inside, let me just see the name, iconography and graphics. So it's going to be here. And now we can get the mascot. And again, if for some reason the boss says, oh, no, I don't like it orange, I like it blue, I can make it blue. Or I want one of the eyes to be winking, I can just do this, and it's just going to scale everywhere. And you get a really easy and scalable brand. For iconography specifically, one of the cool things about how Figma works, for example, for icons, is if you're going to be building an icon and you're going to be doing a little bit of detail here and there, let's say that we wanted to create a small version of this that is like our user icon or something like that, because a lot of brands do this type of personalizations. So I'm going to use the same vectors that I have here. I'm going to pull it out, and I'm going to make it really small, size that you would see in an icon. So I'm just going to make it like 24 by 24 pixels or something like that. Give me a second here. It's going to look weird on purpose, okay? I'm going to fix it later. Okay, so fonts. This is the actual dimension of an icon. We're at 867 pixels. If you put the pixel preview on, you can see that it's really like small, but the fact is like a lot of these things are like this. But we don't want this icon to be that dense. We need to make it simpler. So we remove stuff like the color. We can keep using it like this so we can see like how it would look and how it would pixelate a little bit, so we can keep this on to make sure that we're doing better options. Maybe we can make the line a little bit thicker, like 2 points. Okay, but now we'll lose a little bit of the face. So I'm going to simplify the face and make it maybe smaller eyes just to have this. And it kind of gives you alignment tools, so you can spend less time with that. Done. Okay, but now that I have this icon and I want to build a bunch of these, I actually have an issue, which is I want to play around with having a library where I have a bunch of these, and I don't want to waste too much time building them and separating them or whatever. So I'm just going to turn off the pixel preview so you guys can see how this works. It's not this one. It's this one. My bad. Here we go. What you can do to not lose that availability of building these things, but then exporting icons that work really well and work on any other interfaces, is you can use stuff like Figma Boolean operations that do stuff like union and subtraction, things like that. And what's going to happen? It's going to break, apparently. I'm just going to do this by steps because sometimes it's needed when it's a little bit more of a complex shape. Let me see if now it works. It's the shape outside that has too many curves and sometimes it breaks. I'm gonna make it a little bit bigger and it's gonna go back. Okay. What you're gonna do here is the icon that we just created, if you export it or use it anywhere, it's gonna be outlined. But if you need to make sure that you have a version of it that has smaller fonts or anything like that, you can still just tap enter and you have the editable versions inside, and you can still play around with the width of the line and make them slimmer or anything like that. If we use stuff like the shapes from Figma, instead of having the little vectorize option of the, I don't want a polygon, I want to start. Give me a second here. If you want to make like a little star with the same number of points, but keep it editable so you can play around, for example, with the density of it. I'm just going to make the rounded corners like 25. And the line outside, well, actually 25 or something. Okay. Let's say that we want to replace it with this one. I think, where is it? Here. We can just replace this line with that one. And let's say, okay, the bigger icon has a bunch of options, but we need to do an even smaller icon here for some reason. I'm just going to put it with the same. And the smaller icon really won't read well, so we need to reduce. So you can still keep all of those controls, and you can reduce the number of icons, and like really easily build these two and have them ready. And again, these are icons. You can put them into a collection and have them running. And if you do stuff like making sure that they are built in the same way and with the same name, in this case, they are called union. I'm going to call them icon. When you turn them into a component like this, and this one is going to be star small and star big. If for some reason you're using a copy of this and you build them in the same way and you're going to change the color of it, which is, let's say, brand 3, and you need to use the small one, because they are built the same way, is going to keep the color and things like that. So you don't have to go back and forth and trying to replace colors really fast or anything like that. They just come attached to the way that you build your icons. So it's a good trick to use this thing, the union, and just give them a name. Sometimes even if your icon was just like a circle, you add a square, you do union, you delete the square, and it still keeps the same option, and then just call it that whatever you want on that top level where you have the union or the subtraction or whatever, and it's going to create these scalable icons, and all of your icon library will keep the colors even if you change your icon, for example. And this works really well for illustrations too and things like that. If you use elements that are like background, foreground, and you keep them with the same names, they're just going to keep having these properties reserved and do things like that. So icons are really good, and if for some reason you prefer to have these in a way that you want to have the sizes as like little option instead of having to go and search for it, you can then combine them as variants and put this like size. And when you're using your icons, you now can choose if you want a small or a big size because it was the name of the properties that you gave them. So I'm not going to go too deep into the features, but you can see that you can use stuff like this to scale a lot. But if you have a gigantic collection of icons, don't put them all into variants. Why? Variants give you lists of the name, while components allow you to search visually. So if you need to change an icon, you can see the preview here when you have a separate components. If you put them into a variable, you're just going to get a list of names, and it's going to be really hard. I've seen a lot of people using variables to make big collections. You can use them for stuff like this, dimensions. Don't use them for those details, okay? And then stuff like layouts and socials, last part of using just mostly Figma to build these things. If you use stuff like auto layout, you can just build the layout on one thing and then adapt it and put it on another really fast. I'm just going to do this because we don't have that much time with another brand really fast that I have here. Let's say that I have, well, if it copied, apparently it didn't. Creating brands with Figma, and here we go. You can already see that it changed stuff because I have the whole thing set up in a way that it changes according to the brand. It's just probably going to break some things, but I'm going to do my best. I built this using auto layout. So a lot of the stuff that I have here are already adjusting by themselves. The only thing that it's getting wrong, it's the brand color on the bottom. So I'm just going to choose this to like complementary color. And for example, in this case, you can see that I can easily use this. I'm just going to make it with the correct size so you guys can see whatever is written there. So give me a second here. It's not working. Why? It's always like that. It's when you need them to work the most is when they just go like, nah, not going to do it. I know how to fix this. And now I can choose dimensions. Well, and then this thing will allow me to do that, I think, or not. Apparently not. They just hate me, and they're not going to work as I wanted. Really? Really? Oh, because the styles broke. Okay, got it. My bad. Now it's going to break even more, but that's basically how I built it. So you can see that the fonts are changing sizes because the styles and everything that we built here has ways of working. In this case, actually, what I want is not the big one, is the medium, which is smaller, I think. And it should get that by default, but apparently it is not for some reason. Okay, elements are here. You need to adapt them to another. You drop it like there, and you just scale it up. If you need to make sure that it just adapts a little bit, you can do scale, but then a lot of the other properties, like the fact that things are stuck on the bottom or on the top, are the same. You don't waste that much time building layouts. If you go to an extent where you actually take a lot of time building these, it's easier. But even if you need to do stuff like, let's say that you just want to change things really fast and put this one on the bottom and the other one on the top, because it's built with our layout, it's just literally just changing orders, and it does really fast. Or for some reason you want the text to be horizontal, same thing. Here on the right, you have options to click, put it horizontal, and it's faster to do a lot of things than having to do them all by hand. It just gives you options and allows you to play around with what you're building, wasting less time building, okay? And that's a little bit about creating brands or creating elements for a brand with Figma. I know there was a lot of stuff happening here, but it's just understanding how you can kind of use the tools that you would use for a card or button or whatever, but for visual brand. And let's just go here. Let's talk about the use of plugins to then help with that visual branding, a lot of stuff. So Figma, you've seen a lot of tools allow you to do a lot of stuff, but still has a lot of limitations if you think about how Figma and other tools kind of work. If you're coming from Adobe, you're used to having Illustrator, Photoshop, InDesign. You're used to having Illustrator and Photoshop have gazillion features that are hidden in menus and submenus. And Figma doesn't do that. Their UI is made for simplicity. So the whole thing is, what is the 20% that has 80% of the use? That's the logic behind how Figma interface and how the Figma tools work. But they are an open tool at the end of the day. They have APIs. They have a bunch of stuff that allow you to connect with Figma. So you have plugins that you can do. So what else can we do with those plugins and play around and building things? Okay, so let's start with playing around with things like this. Here I have a version of the logo. And if you notice something, we have text around the circle. That's not a native feature that Figma has. But there's a bunch of plugins that do that. And they're as easy as working with any other tool. So let's say that we need to build a little line and we want to put a message here on the line. You build a line, you write whatever you want. Anyone wants to say something? No worries. I have the words for it. I can click here and I can find my tagline really fast. And I can find my brand font really fast. And I can just select them both and do this. To path, which is the name of the plugin. It's here because I have it pre-saved, so I don't have to waste time with it. I can select where the text is going to align. I can just link. Text is there. You want to see it change, you can just come here and start tweaking with the font. It's going to update live. You can just start playing around with things. It takes a little bit to do, but you can see that it's done. Once you're ready, you just turn it off, and now you have here your thing. If you want to delete the line, you can. The whole thing is basically individual characters positioned in the correct place, so you don't really lose the font. So if for some reason you want to change something, like let's say that I want to make this bold, it still has properties so you can play with it. Somewhat simple, easy enough to play around with. Let's say that you're trying to build something as a composition and you just don't want to lose that much time. I'm going to go to Unsplash, and you wanted to get like a specific object from a photo, something like that, or removing a background from a photo so you can play with your branded elements and things like that. So, yay, plugin services really are bad today. I'm just going to do a refresh to the tab. Maybe that will fix. Sometimes that's all that it needs. But apparently, I'm here to get problems today. So yeah, I'm just going to grab a photo. Let's see. Now it's faster. Yeah, I just had to do a reload. Now I'm sad that I didn't show the other one. I'm going to go back and show the other one really fast. And let's say that we want someone's portrait, so I'm just going to look for portrait. If you don't want to take that much time, it has an option here with a keyword. I'm just going to get my free photos, and I want something that is on portrait, so vertical, and going to put the latest to see what happens, to see if there's anything cool. This guy had a lot of fun putting his photos online, apparently. A lot of fun, you can see. I love this one, so I'm just going to use it. And there you go. Apply to the whole background because I have the object selected. Be aware that if you want to apply it to a square, circle, whatever, it will. If you just want to get an image, make sure that you don't have anything selected. But I don't want to just use this guy like this, although, again, amazing photo. I want to remove the background, but this is in Photoshop. So what you do, you go to plugins. So if you don't want to think too much and you want to leave it to AI, you have stuff like Icon Hate, the background remover. You click a button. It's just going to take a while, look at the image, try to figure out what's on the top, what's on the bottom, and it's going to take the background out. While it's running, you can keep doing other things. So, for example, I'm just going to play around and try to make a little composition with this. Let's see. Oh, the image is here, so I'm going to put it down. Then, like, maybe I can put this here, but then I'm going to play around and just drop this other logo here. And you can see it already did a good job. Of course, there's going to be weird stuff, but it did a good job for at least that initial composition. You can play around really fast. You want to have a color behind them, you can just come here and add a color behind them. So just going to do this. Yeah, I think this guy can sell our juices, and then we can play around and just put another brand color here really fast and see how it looks. Yeah, there's options here. And it didn't take that much time. You didn't have to go through a bunch of stuff. For this type of implementation, especially if you have stuff like social media content and things like that that you need to work with, people don't need to be overly precious with those. And it's easy to use these tools to just generate them. But if you want a specific object, let's say that now instead of him, we want to grab a couple of things from a photo that you took with your product, for example, a couple of things like this. You really don't want or can't give the time to just the tool do itself and just break the things, and you want to select it. There's one called Cutout. On the free version, it's a little bit lower resolution. The paid version has a little bit more quality, but overall it still works really well. So the plugin kind of just runs the image, tries to figure out what things are, and when you click on an object, it's going to cut out the object for you, getting it ready for you to use. It kind of works like, I don't know if you guys ever use this on PowerPoint, but PowerPoint has a tool kind of like this to do cutouts where you select the areas that you want, you remove the others, you don't need to think too much. You click on the cutout, it's going to generate an image cut. Some photos are better than others. This one was kind of okay. And now we can just pick it up and do this. Let's see, and maybe can I kind of like, or like this? I think like this is better. There we go. Awesome hat. Well, I can cut a little bit of the straw. There you go. Nice. So again, Figma doesn't have anything like this built into its system. You can use masks to do crops, but then you would have to go and literally go around and try to do this. It just works. Now, let's use the other plugin that I was talking about for colors really fast. I'm just going to grab one of these. Can here, drop the photo that I want to get the colors from, and use the image palette. So image palette, again, runs the whole thing, generates color for you. Fast. Doesn't take that much time. See? Really easy. But now let's say that we want to turn these into our brand colors and you don't want to do the process that I went, where you go one by one or whatever. There's this tool called Styler that allows you to generate styles based on the name of the layers. So you just rename the layers of the objects. In this case, they already come with color 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. You just click Styler, generate styles, and it generates all of those color styles, and they are already here available to use. Simple. If you want them to be organized and things like that, you can just come here, make sure that the names are organized. In this case, the brand is called, I don't remember, Stillstream. Stillstream / the names of the colors. And when you do generate styles, it's going to get that information and it's going to organize them in the little Stillstream folder already, all ready to find and easy to use.
Do you rename everything?
So renaming is native to Figma. When you select objects and you do Command R or Control R, you can just have this thing where you can rename all of the objects. You can do things like matching keywords and replace them. You can do things like using the current name by clicking on this button and then having stuff in front of it, right? Or if you want to do like order or something like that, you can just, in this case, current name, and then click on the numbers and it will give you a little numbering option. This uses a language called regex, which is a very specific geeky thing, but it allows you to use code words to do things. If you have more ends, for example, it's just going to start adding numbers. And you can do stuff like if you need a code that has like 6 digits, you can use that. And you can also choose if you want to start by whatever number you want, right? If you wanted the number to be 2022, it will be the 2022 something, okay? So there's options there to do. It's easy enough to build. And again, we created styles really fast with Styler. But more than that, we can also do things like the last one that I'm going to do. So I'm just going to separate the background from the photo. I'm going to have this only have the photo. And we all know that Figma has only a few things for things like drop shadows and everything like that. When you're trying to use this, it's like it's quite limited. It allows you for this little bit of control. You can see now where it is weirdly pixelated, but allows you to create shadows, but they're not really good. But because people are crazy, someone created a thing called Beautiful Shadows, which is a plugin that allows you to basically have a little light control, and if the object is a little bit closer to the ground or not, if your shadows should be a specific color, so I can just come here, pick my brand color, and then make it darker, and it will look a little bit more nicer. And it generates, using Figma shadows, a collection of shadows you can see here on the right, with the specs that creates these more realistic, beautiful shadows. And it's easy enough to make this amazing ad with this guy that is super cool. He's looking at you. He has a little bit of Michael Jackson, doesn't he? Yeah. Okay.
Bruno, sorry, just have a question about the plugin Styler. Do you use it only for colors or also
Fonts.
Oh, okay.
All works for colors, fonts, styles. Like in this case, if we want to change and save this drop shadow, we can just call this shadow and then generate styles, and it will generate 2 styles, including a shadow style with that. So everything that exists as a property that can be turned into a style, it turns into a style with the name of the layer that you have. Okay. So in this case, I think that it was gonna get also the image is called shadow here, right? Like you created a little image field with the guy. So now we can have fun and just apply shadow everywhere. And when you come here and just, hey, what's going on? My clicks are not working. Huh. Okay. We can just apply shadow wherever we want. So easy enough. We can just make everything shadow, and that's it. I'm just gonna have fun with that. Yeah, that's more a little bit late. Okay, mock-up really fast. We don't really have again Photoshop type skills here. Illustrator actually just launched a really cool tool for that now, which was amazing. But let's look at how you can easily use mock-up tools. The first one that I have here already, this object, is a thing called Artport Studio. You need to create an account on another program for this and get a little API key. But then if you have stuff like, let's say, your logo and your character here, we can literally just build really fast. Just gonna use scale to make it easier. Your brand label. If you want to have your brand color on the cap, you can also come here and put your brand color on the cap. I'm just gonna take the background, sorry about that, and put a little label with rounded corners on the background. Another brand color, maybe the pink works. I have issues with accessibility here, sorry about that. Just gonna take the outline there. Just works weird, but it will do the job. And once you run Artport Studio or Artport Mockups, as they renamed it, since this already came from there, you have a bunch of them that are free, you have others that are paid. They generate these things, and you just click on Render Selected Frame, and it will render the mockup directly on your object that they pre-prepared to have ready. So it doesn't take that much time, easy enough to create mockups with this one really fast. Same thing can be for one of the most recent famous plugins, which is the Mockup plugin. Literally used to be called just Mockup, but people wouldn't find it because Mockup wouldn't put it on top of the search. Now it's called Mockup plugin. It's easier to find. They have really cool high-end quality plugins on products that no one else has, including, for example, the Nothing phone, which is just no one else has been doing this. It's a really cool new product and great to showcase your stuff. It mostly has things like digital devices, but you can basically search for whatever you want. And even on the free stuff, for example, we have this really cool ID cards. You just click on here where it says upload the design. You just need to click on an object here and it generates, and then you can generate an image. It goes on the free edition, on the free version, you can go up to 6,000 pixels, and you can even keep them in layers and have control of the whole thing. Again, don't need to go and waste a lot of money on a bunch of software to just do this. It's easy enough. But if you have a product photo or a software or something that you want to do, if it's a square, there's a really cool plugin called Angle Mockups that is going to do the job for you. So if I look for a laptop and I want to put a website on a specific photo that I like of someone using a laptop, none of these are cool, but I'm going to use this one. This is what happens when you're rushing through things, but yeah. You can just, come on. Okay. You can just draw a little square, and apparently it's not on top of it because they are on different areas, so I'm just going to do this. Here we go. And then after using the square tool from Figma, you put the corners where you want. In this case, like this. You make sure that whatever you want to put here is on a frame. In this case, I have the label design here. I'm just going to duplicate it and make like a... I'm clicking on things that I don't know where. Come on, come on, come on, come on. I'm going too fast, and that's what happens when you're already over time. So sorry, guys. I'm just going to make it kind of like more of a website type of thing. I'm going to literally call it website. And the other plugin that I'm going to talk about is Angle Mockups. And Angle Mockups literally lets you choose whatever frame you have that you have. I need to pull it out for it to figure it out. Whatever square you put like this, it needs to start as a square always. If you use Angle Mockups, you select the square, you select the image, it generates the image on whatever surface you want with the resolution you need. Really fast to create mockups. Then you can use Figma effects and everything like that, like shadows, whatever, to create more realistic style, as in every other software. And last but not least, okay, you don't want any of that. You just want plain old Photoshop. So you go and you ask for Photo P, which is literally an image generator, an image editor that exists for ages online, which is basically a copy of Photoshop, and it just opens a full Photoshop inside Figma. You have layers. It's a PSD file, so you actually can open PSD or save a PSD file if you want to then continue on Photoshop. It's not as powerful as modern Photoshop, but it's good enough for most things, and you can do things like editing photos, cropping with a little bit more detail. It's just a tool that works, and again, is very proud of you guys for using it. Okay. Last but not least, I had one here. I was going to try to bring you guys some things about generating ideas. There's a really cool one, but I don't know how to use it properly, so I'm not going to use it, but I'm just going to show the UI. If you ever played with generative art, there's a tool called Generator that allows you to do that inside Figma. So it uses modules where you can connect things and you can generate things like patterns that multiply randomly and things like that, so you don't have to do it all by hand. It's quite cool. Have fun with it. They can generate stuff that I've never seen anyone else generate, so just try and play around with it. And I think that's more than enough to talk about visual design. And let's go to the last block, which is variables and libraries, and how can you use those to manage and scale your brands. So let's talk scale and how you can do it. As I've told you before, I have a bunch of these things created already with font styles, with logos, with colors, with text, and some of them are styles and components. You can see here that I have, for example, the 4 logos under brand logo. But most of them are actually variables. Variables are this thing that Figma just started rolling out a while ago. There are these gigantic collections of information that you can build. There's limitations on the pro plans and everything only allow you to create 4 modes. So that's why I have, in this case, 4 brands. But for example, you can create variables for text, for colors, for numbers, or for little buttons to toggle on and off. So what I did was I created things like a variable for the name of the brand, for the website of the brand, for content like a tagline or a key message, because almost every brand has that, and even for brand colors and body fonts and title fonts. So stuff that I know that every brand uses. What this allows me to do is I create a little kit of elements that I know that are going to be shared amongst all of them, so I can create also templates that use those informations attached to things. So in this case, for example, I'm going to break this, but here, this little text box could have lorem ipsum for all I cared. But if I want for this text box to actually have content, since I have that content created as a variable, I can just come here to the right and click apply variable, look for what I want, which is a tagline, and it's going to get me the tagline of the brand that is on. But in this case, since I basically already used everything and set up correctly, if I change the brand on my variables, I can come here where it says layer. I can choose another brand, and it's going to get me the brand color and the name of the brand and the tagline of the brand and the description of the brand. I didn't thought this thoroughly because the logo is actually red, so my fault on this one. So I'm just going to make it one of my grayscales so that they all come with that grayscale thing. But yeah, and then the same thing is going to happen if I change to design is for everyone. Again, my main color is white, so it breaks a little bit, but you can already see all of the things changing. And the last thing is my personal brand. So this is the type of stuff that, for example, if you're in an agency, you can create a brand pack, fuel it as a form, and have a pre-built set of things that you know that are kind of similar. Again, you don't start from square zero. And it saves you a lot of time, and it creates a lot of good practices on how you build brands. Plus, this is how you build the brand systems that I was talking about, right? Among styles, variables, and things like that, you can save a bunch of information that it's reusable. It's easy to go around and take everywhere. So the fact is that before that would be colors and font styles, now can also be messages or even keywords and things like that. Product names, hashtags, things that you know that you're going to be using again and again and again and again. You just turn them into a little variable and you can use them everywhere. There are some limitations for text. For example, if you have a description that is paragraphs, they don't support paragraphs, but it's still better than to go and look for copy and paste on a Google Doc somewhere. You always have that saved on the variable, and you can work with your copywriter so that they can just create a little collection of variables where you have key messages, and they just literally need to come here, create variable, text, write whatever, and you get that information. And this can also work, for example, if you work inside a company and you have multiple sub-brands, like I shared, for example, the conference one or the product one, and you can just create specific messages or specific keywords or specific usernames for each one of those, and it's simpler enough to use Figma to scale it up. Okay? I say simple, but it's not that simple. But it's still simpler than having to go around and gather all of this information every time and having like a gazillion files or whatever. So that's it. I didn't put a thank you slide because I thought that it was going to be like already too much information. And I was just going to go back to, hi, I'm Bruno. And I hope you guys learned what you were looking for here and figuring out ways of playing around with Figma and building brands and creating stuff. I'm just going to stop sharing my screen here. I love the amazing plugins comment because, of course. And I'm just going to open the floor for questions, and if you have them or not. Go ahead. Anyone. Just, if you don't have any questions, it's okay. It's fine. We'll still have time to talk a little bit here. I don't see anyone having questions on the chat. So people online, if you're still listening. Oh, okay. We have one question in the room. So I'm just going to do this, and I'm going to put you on the stand.
So my question is, we all know like Figma is very good for like web and projects that are web. And but when you are talking about branding, sometimes branding means printing.
Yes.
And what do you think about it? Like you also do part of projects or printing in Figma, or
Yes.
you just move to another like Adobe software to do that?
Okay, so I'm just going to repeat in case they haven't heard it, but like Figma is mostly digital, so it just supports RGB as the color profiles and things like that. And there's some features that don't come for print. Plugins solve it, honestly. Although if you still have an Adobe license, as many people do, what we do a lot of times is we design most of it in Figma, and then we just import into Illustrator to finalize and do like cleanup of final artworks. But there are plugins who do stuff like preparing your files for print, from color profiles to heading, bleeds, and crop marks, things like that if you need. So all of that already exists as an extension to Figma through plugins. It's just that it just needs to be adapted to whatever your framework is. In any case, I haven't worried too much about that because print still is becoming less and less prevalent. Even on universes like me, that I work for a big tech company like Boots and things like that, sometimes are becoming digital and more motion and things like that. So I haven't used it as much. For projects like Friends of Figma and things like that, we build a lot of the stuff and we do it all on Figma. For example, everything last year that we had for our conference layers was designed and produced inside Figma and printed directly from Figma. We kind of just did a lot of crazy tweaking of RGB color codes to make sure that it worked for print. But yeah, like if it's like more professional stuff, I would always argue that some plugins are really good for it because they convert color modes, plus they had a bunch of information like DPIs and things like that, so you get better results. Was that a good answer?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Any other questions? Not? You're tired. You're sick of hearing me. I know, I talk a lot. I'm going to thank you all and everyone online. Oh, wait, I have a Q&A. Cool. With AI continuing to surprise us and making the job easier, how do you imagine the design process be like in 5 years? What's the craziest thing you can imagine? You literally have a meeting and you work like me because I'm crazy, which is the customer is saying things and I'm putting them on paper or on screen and showing them at the same time. And I think that's what's going to start happening to the design process. Is ideas and the initial concept is going to come out really, really fast. Everything else still going to take time, less time, but it's still going to need someone who cares about user experience. It's still going to need someone who has a good baseline of what a specific aesthetic is and everything like that. It's just that our tool set is going to change. So I don't think it's going to change a lot of what we do. It just that makes the process much faster. From, again, there's no white canvas anymore. Our creativity can be really fastly centered into ideas and turn into realities. And the fact is that AI is going to change a lot in the next few years, not just on the capabilities that it can do, but probably is going to be locked in a lot of ways with legislation and things like that starting to creeping up and gonna crop a lot of legs on these guys for sure. So I feel like we're going to have a world where all of this that I just shared is not useless in any ways. It just becomes different, and we can always adjust to difference. It's just being open-minded and not afraid of doing things. Plus, craft and people who do things very manually or anything like that are going to become much more valuable. So be ready to just up your prices and become very specialist or something, because that is going to actually become a thing. On general application and like more baseline stuff, I think that's going to become easier. Canva already did that, right? It's not like Canva is not already doing that for graphic design overall. So why not just assuming that Canva is not a bad design tool, it's just that we need to think about design differently. Okay. Anything else? No. I don't see any other questions here. I think the chat also doesn't have any other questions here. So thanks everyone for showing up today. And thanks to everyone online. And I was just gonna ask if you guys don't want to run, the ones in the room, I would love to take a group photo because that's always good. And that's it.